Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our National Women's Business Council quarterly public meeting. And with that, I would like to begin today's conference and turn the call over to Carla Harris, Chair of the National Women's Business Council.
Thank you very much, Tony, and welcome everyone to the first National Women's Business Council quarterly public meeting of the 2016 fiscal year. My name is Carla Harris, and I'm the Chair of the Council, and thank you again for joining us today. Today's webinar will include updates from the Council on our research agenda and our communications efforts. After this, we will have a very robust conversation about women's access to the federal marketplace and the Women-Owned Small Business Program and that federal contracting program specifically. We have lined up two special guest speakers and an experienced set of panelists. We look forward to a very dynamic discussion about strategies beyond sole source to finally reach the 5% women-owned small business goal in fiscal year 16. This meeting is officially called to order at 2:08 p.m. And let's start with a review of all of our council members. Marsha Bailey, Rosanna Privatera-Biondo, Kim Blackwell, Terry Warburg-Block, Shelley Kapoor-Collins, Sherry Stewart-Deutschman, Marsha Firestone, Whitney Keys, Dr. Teresa Nelson, Pam Prince-Eason, Deb Rosado-Shaw, Ann Shabunko Moore, and Laura Yamanaka. And finally, I'd like to introduce Christy Arslan, who is joining us for the first time as a member of the National Women's Business Council. As you all know, at our last meeting, we said goodbye to one of our esteemed council members, Magdala Racine Silva, who represented Women Impacting Public Policy, more commonly known as WIP. WIP is a national nonpartisan public policy organization advocating on behalf of its coalition of 4.7 million businesswomen, including 75 different business organizations. WIP identifies important trends and opportunities and provides a collaborative model for the public and private sectors to increase the economic power of women-owned businesses. Stepping into this position on the council is the esteemed WIP Executive Director, Christy Arslan. Christy, thank you for joining us. And for those of you... Sorry, Christy. Go ahead.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. Christy, for those of you who don't know, leads the organization in its efforts to advocate for women and minority business owners on economic policy and current legislative initiatives that impact business health and growth. Christy's many years of advocating on behalf of the small business community, as well as her personal experience as a business owner, has brought her critical insight on the issues affecting our nation's women-owned businesses. Before joining WIP, she served as the president and CEO of the National Association for the Self-Employed, where she successfully rose through the ranks to lead the organization. And during her tenure, she launched the association's successful growth grant program and women entrepreneurship initiative and founded the National Association for Self-Employed Member Council. She's widely known as a small business expert with extensive public policy experience. And as I said earlier, she's a small business owner herself. So I look forward to enjoying some of your popcorn, Christy.
Thank you.
So we have an exciting agenda for today's meeting. In a moment, I'll turn it over to my fellow council members, Laura Yamanaka and Kim Blackwell, for some brief updates on our newest research and findings, and then updates on our engagement and communications efforts. In the second half of the meeting, we'll be joined by a panel of federal procurement experts, including business leaders, SBA officials, and procurement practitioners, to discuss the strategies to get more federal dollars and more contracts to more women entrepreneurs and to reach that 5% goal for federal procurement to women-owned small businesses, which, as you all know, has never been met. At the end of both the updates and the panel, we'll hold some time, as we always do, to hear from you. We value your input and your questions, and we want to be sure to respond to any of those comments and questions that you might have. A quick reminder, please feel free to use the hashtag #BeyondThe5 on Twitter and Facebook, and our Twitter handle is @NWBC, and we can be found on Facebook at nwbc.gov. I am happy to report that we have reached a milestone, 10 million women-owned businesses strong. This is an exciting accomplishment coming nearly 3 decades in the making after the passage of the Women's Business Ownership Act, H.R. 5050, which, as you all know, was enacted by Congress in 1988. H.R. 5050 also established the National Women's Business Council as a federal advisory council to the U.S. Small Business Administration, the U.S. Congress, and the White House on issues of impact and importance to aspiring and current women business owners and leaders. It is our job to equip the nation's decision makers, both public and private, with policy recommendations that will impact and improve the business climate for women entrepreneurs in our country. We do this by producing best-in-class research on the most relevant issues facing current and aspiring women business owners and leaders. Our hope is to use compelling and rigorous research to incite action and to build bridges to support women's entrepreneurial ambitions and endeavors. As evidenced by the numbers and lived by many of you on this call today, women's entrepreneurship has evolved from a growing trend to an integral contributor to innovation, as well as economic and job growth in this country. The Council is proud to represent the collective voices of women entrepreneurs. Together with you, we're building on the power of this growing body of enlightened and empowered women entrepreneurs. And now, I will turn it over to my fellow Council members, starting with Laura Yamanaka and Kim Blackwell, to give an overview of, first, our latest research, and then lastly, our communications and engagement efforts. Laura?
Thank you, Carla. After surveying the entrepreneurship ecosystem for high-growth women entrepreneurs and conducting many conversations with our stakeholders, the Council identified a need to develop an entrepreneurship research platform for growth-minded women entrepreneurs. We got to work developing and designing a potential solution, an online resource platform for the growth of women-owned businesses. This platform will serve as a resource of valuable information and guidance for women entrepreneurs seeking to grow and scale their businesses. The platform will be an easy-to-use platform, functioning as a data repository for relevant practical resources on how to ideate, launch, and grow a business. The Council commissioned Optimal Solutions Group, LLC, for this project, and the research commenced in August. The researchers are in the process of aggregating and mapping the available resources organized by stages of the business cycle. The website is currently in its beta test phase and is expected to launch in the spring of 2016. There are thriving, vibrant local ecosystems that we can and should learn from. Thus, the Council commissioned research to explore some of these regional ecosystems in an effort to identify what is working well and to better understand how these ecosystems are meeting the needs of women entrepreneurs in their region. The Council will explore 6 ecosystems, visiting each in 2016 and looking at the conditions for the success and opportunities for additional support. The Council, in partnership with Washington Core, will convene a series of town halls across the country to convene key stakeholders, entrepreneurs, government, business support, and professional organizations, universities, investors, media, and others to discuss the successes and challenges their community has faced in supporting high-growth women entrepreneurs. From these conversations, we will develop a playbook of policies and recommendations for creating and strengthening regional ecosystems. We look forward to exploring the following cities next year. January, we're going to be in San Francisco. March, we're going to be in Miami. May, we're going to be in Chicago. June in St. Louis. July in Boston. And August in Atlanta. Next, at our last meeting, we reported our analysis of the 2012 Survey of Business Owners. The preliminary data is promising, but there is so much more we can learn from the final and more comprehensive data set expected to be released by the census next week. As such, we have commissioned a project with Womanable to do a deeper dive into the final data set, looking at the growth and development between 2002 and 2012. We will investigate the following areas: changes in growth in the number, employment, payroll, and revenue of women-owned businesses nationally by state, by top 50 metropolitan areas, and by industry over the entire 10-year period and across each 5-year period. Changes in the relative size of women-owned businesses by employment and revenue size categories nationally and by state, metropolitan area, and industry to determine where growth is above and below average. Comparative size gaps between women-owned businesses and all other privately held firms by industry and along the business size continuum, revenue and employment, and how these gaps have or have not changed over the past 10 years, and especially since the recession. This focus on the nuances, trends, and patterns of growth for women's entrepreneurship since 2002 will give us a much cleaner picture. I will now turn it over to my fellow council member, Kimberly Blackwell, to talk to us through an exciting communications and public engagement efforts.
Thanks, Laura. We've had a productive Q4 of engagement with record high rates of impressions through earned media surrounding women's entrepreneurship. Momentum suggests that there's a deep interest from the public with enthusiasm for the current state of women's entrepreneurial endeavors. Looking back in October, we proudly celebrated National Women's Small Business Ownership Month in conjunction with the Council's 27th birthday. We started October with a visit to New Orleans for a Women's Power Social Change Roundtable hosted by Propeller, the NWBC, and the SBA District Office in Louisiana. The event happened on the heels of a conversation highlighting social entrepreneurship that the Council had in Detroit, Michigan earlier this year, and a previous roundtable in New Orleans with Senator Vitter. The roundtable discussion focused on how to better support female entrepreneurs interested in launching social ventures. We were also joined by Meredith West, the Policy Director for the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, who formally presented the resolution declaring October as Women's Small Business Ownership Month. From New Orleans, the second stop was Baltimore, Maryland. Amanda Brown, the Council's Executive Director, participated in the Athenia PowerLink's Baltimore Business Women's Roundtable. There, Amanda presented the trends in women's entrepreneurship and later participated in a social capital and networking panel. Julia Pimsler, CEO and founder of Little Pim and friend of the National Women's Business Council, joined for the afternoon keynote, Going Big is Going Home, drawing upon the parallels of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz and the female entrepreneur. Next up was a trip to Stanford for the Connecticut's WBDC's 14th Annual Business Breakfast. National Women's Business Council alum Fran Pastore is the director of the WBDC, and during the panel, Amanda Brown addressed women's access to corporate supplier diversity programs, and the opportunities for women's business enterprises to significantly increase their sales and growth as they better understand the art of doing big business across the private sector as WBs create and add value throughout the supply chain. Another pillar of the Council's engagement and outreach efforts has been in opportunities of custom resources to help advance the WBE mission in the marketplace. To more effectively centralize the narrative with increased awareness of women's entrepreneurship, the Council has created a new resource tool designed to support and enhance the coverage for female business owners. This is a media resource for journalists and other media makers that want to know more and effectively cover women entrepreneurs. We're excited about its launch tomorrow, and female tips on how to talk about women entrepreneurs, resources, and how to interview female business enterprises and locate women business owners. So please be on lookout. Dialing back to August, we released a study on the structural differences of women's and men's social networks. The findings were shared during our last public meeting, but are also available on the NWBC website. Again, that's nwbc.gov. In summary, the completed research confirms that social networks are a vital aspect to firm survival because they enable the movement of financial, human, and intellectual capital, as well as facilitate the information exchange. But that the usage and the efficacy of those networks vary depending on gender and are impacted by quality and quantity of those involved as end users. From this research, the NWBC designed a separate toolkit aimed to be a practical guide in assessing one's current network, as well as developing a plan to maximize one's future network through the Centers of Excellence. The toolkit has 5 activities or action items to assess one's business wellness and readiness that include the following. Number 1, determining your business goals. Number 2, determining who is in your current network. Number 3, determining the breadth, connectivity, and dynamism of your network. Number 4, determining the operational, strategic, managerial, or personal roles of your peers, mentors, influencers, cheerleaders, realists, prospects, and connectors. And lastly, number 5, assessing your current network and developing a plan to engage and optimize your social network. It is our hope that this toolkit will help women entrepreneurs build and ultimately better maintain effective social networks that will lead to better products, service, and business models. Again, you can find all of this information on nwbc.gov. I'll now turn it back over to Madam Chair to tease the unveiling with a sneak peek of our annual report.
Thank you so much, Kim and Laura. Those are great updates. In the next few weeks, we will release the Council's Fiscal Year 15 Annual Report. In this report, we have synthesized our research, policy, engagement, and communication efforts. We intend to tell the broader story of women's entrepreneurship to reveal the gaps and opportunities to better support women entrepreneurs, and finally to make the case for increased investment. This year, as mentioned before, we are proud to recognize the community of 10 million strong women business owners representing a diversity of industries, backgrounds, ethnicities, and geographies. These women are strengthening our economy, investing in their communities, and most importantly, creating jobs. But while there is great progress and a steep growth trajectory, we have yet to see women-owned and women-led firms given the access and opportunity to live up to their fullest potential. There's still a ways to go to achieve economic and leadership parity in this country. Women are behind in earnings and receipts and in the amount of venture capital and other forms of equity investment that they receive. We continue to lack access to some of our most crucial assets, capital and markets, necessary to launch and grow businesses. We are at a tipping point, no question. It's a time for celebration, but also a call to action to effectively sustain and improve this momentum. Within the report are the Council's policy recommendations. These are opportunities and initiatives that we've identified through our research, our convenings, and our engagement efforts that we believe will improve the business climate for current and prospective women entrepreneurs. To most effectively organize our recommendations, we developed a new ecosystem model and mapped our recommendation to these various components. The model was developed with Washington Core as a part of our ecosystems research project. The characteristics of an effective ecosystem, as we've defined it, include finance. Are the entrepreneurs able to access capital? Policy. How can governments create a business-friendly environment? Markets. Are entrepreneurs able to access markets or create new ones? Human capital. Can entrepreneurs source the human capital necessary for their business goals? Community building. Are entrepreneurs connecting within and outside of their network? Culture. How are entrepreneurial endeavors shared and recognized more broadly? Innovation. How do institutions support and encourage new ideation? And finally, resources. What services and programs are available for entrepreneurs to launch and grow their businesses? I'm pleased to share some recommendations within this year's report. Now, it is a sneak peek because the report won't be out for a few weeks, but here's a few things that we'll be talking about. Resources. The Council is recommending that an online resource repository be created for the WBC program. As confirmed by the impact study completed earlier this year, this program would benefit greatly from a centralized, accessible database for sharing program resources, curriculum, templates, staff development, and training tools. Innovation. The Council is eager to explore the challenges to commercialization for women in STEM fields through both research and dialogue in our 2016 year. It is important that we identify opportunities to strengthen the pipeline into STEM fields and also increase the rate of their academic commercialization. Also, under innovation, the Council is calling for increased efforts to diversify SBA's SBIR and STTR programs. We need to identify new opportunities and strategies to recruit women into these programs. Culture. We've been making this case in recent years, and you all who've attended our public meetings have heard us talk about this over and over again, but it's worth noting for a formal recommendation. The Council recommends broadening the definition of women-owned businesses to capture women-led businesses. It's important that we similarly recognize women that are running and leading businesses but fall short of the 51% ownership requirements for policy and program benefits, particularly federal procurement programs. This would open the doors of opportunities to more women who are running, scaling, and leading businesses and more fully capture the economic impact of women in business. Also, under culture, another recurring recommendation is child care. It is imperative that we act to increase provisions for affordable child care in this country to enable and empower more women entrepreneurs. Finance. As part of our research on access to capital, we found that previous industry experience is a stronger indicator of firm survival than previous startup experience, which is the more commonly asked question in the lending process. We also know that women tend to have less startup experience than their male counterparts. This recommendation is for the lending and investment community to better incorporate industry experience as a part of their decision-making to lend or to allocate capital. Finally, markets. The Council is calling for data collection on women and exporting. There's very little information or data available on this marketplace, and specifically women's access and participation. To better understand and support, we need to measure participation, and more importantly, we need to measure performance. Look for the annual report. It'll be out in just a few weeks. And now, Senator, are you with us?
We're going to give her 3 more minutes, Carla, but we do have John, so if you can go ahead. You can introduce John.
Okay, outstanding. Jeanne Shaheen is one of our special guests today. He is the Associate Administrator of Government Contracting and Business Development at the U.S. Small Business Administration. His team supports thousands of small businesses every year as they compete for over $500 billion in federal prime contracts and in subcontracts. In his current role, John is responsible for overseeing the umbrella office with jurisdiction over the agency's offices of size standards, HubZone, government contracting, and business development, 8A. John has a background in business development, international trade, government contracting, and management, and works on behalf of small businesses and entrepreneurs across the country as they turn to the SBA for the tools that they need to start, grow, scale, and create jobs. Prior to his current role, he served as regional administrator for the SBA. There's really no one better than John to talk about this and set us up for our panel discussion. He's joining to share more about the SBA's implementation of sole source within the WSB Federal Contracting Program and to break down what it really means for both women small business owners and contracting officers. John?
Thank you, Carla, and please interrupt me as soon as the senator is available.
Hey, John, I'm going to be the bad person here and make that interruption. Sorry about that.
That's
Carla,
fine.
we can go ahead and introduce the senator. She is dialed in.
Okay, outstanding. It is my honor to introduce our special speaker, Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire. She's a strong advocate for women's business ownership. She's served in the United States Senate since 2009 and sits on many committees, including the Senate Committees on Armed Services, Foreign Relations, Appropriations, and Small Business and Entrepreneurship. As a former small business owner, Senator Shaheen has worked to keep the U.S. economy competitive in the global marketplace through her efforts on the Small Business Committee and through legislation such as the Small Business Jobs Act and the Small Business Innovation Research Program. The first New Hampshire governor to lead trade missions outside North America, Senator Shaheen has also co-sponsored legislation to help small businesses sell their products overseas. Her annual Experience New Hampshire event in Washington, D.C. gives New Hampshire businesses a forum to showcase their products and services. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Senator Shaheen to our quarterly public meeting. Senator?
Thanks very much, Carla. And John, I'm sorry to bump you in the agenda, but I appreciate your letting me go in front of you. And as you heard from Carla, I've been a big supporter of small businesses for a very long time. My husband and I got our start as a married couple running a small business. It was a family-owned business that we were in with his sister and her husband, and we did that. That business was very good to us. It put us both through graduate school, gave us the down payment on a home, and more important, probably taught me a lot of lessons about the challenges facing small businesses, dealing with regulations and meeting that payroll every week and dealing with all of the employee issues, and then, of course, trying to market your products. So it was a small retail business. It was very good to us, and it gave me a real appreciation for the importance of small businesses to our economy. That was reinforced for me when I got elected governor. New Hampshire has a small business economy. 96% of our employers are small businesses. So I understand how critical it is for us to support small businesses in this country. And, of course, as a former small business woman myself, I'm especially appreciative of all of the women entrepreneurs out there who are starting up small businesses and who have been in small businesses for a long time and are working to make sure that they can grow. I have two daughters who have just started small businesses in the last few years, and so I'm getting a real firsthand from them view of the challenges that they're facing. So this is something that I believe in. I think we've got to do more to help women-owned businesses, and that's part of my goal as ranking member on the Small Business Committee. With your help, last year we were able to get sole source contract authority for women-owned small businesses, and that's absolutely critical as you compete for those government contracts. The federal government is the world's largest buyer of goods and services, purchasing over $91 billion from small businesses. As you all know, that's why it's so important to be part of that sole source opportunity that exists, which for too long was denied to women-owned businesses. So I'm thrilled that that got done. Now the real challenge is making sure that we can get it implemented in a way that benefits women-owned businesses and gets done in a timely fashion. And, of course, that's what John is going to talk about. But I've been working with Administrator Contreras Sweet to address these issues, and with all of the SBA, and I know everybody's dedicated to getting this done in as timely a fashion as possible in a way that's going to help women-owned businesses. And I'm also interested in hearing your ideas for what more we should be doing through the Small Business Committee to promote access to capital, to promote job training for the employees that you need, to just think about how we can support you as you continue to be successful. So I really look forward to hearing the feedback from the call and anything that we can do in our office to support your efforts we would like to do, and I hope you will share with us any ideas that you have about what we can do to be more effective on the Small Business Committee. So thanks very much, Carla and John. I look forward to continuing to work with you and everybody in the SBA as we make this sole source contracting provision work.
Thank you so much, Senator Shaheen, and thank you for all of your outstanding work on behalf of women entrepreneurs and small businesses in this country. And we look very much forward to continue to move the agenda forward with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John.
Okay, thank you, Carla, and I do want to thank Senator Shaheen also because she is such a champion of small businesses and women-owned small businesses in particular. We work very closely with the Senate Small Business Committee in identifying changes and new provisions. As she mentioned, our administrator worked very closely with the senator to get the sole source provision through, and I will certainly speak to where we are with respect to sole source provisions, where we are with respect to some of the other changes that came out of National Defense Authorization Act of 14 or 15 it was. And then maybe if possible, Carla, I don't know if we have the opportunity to open it up for a couple of questions as well, if we can. I know we want to try to keep on schedule, but as the Senator mentioned, when we talk about small business procurement as part of the federal government procurement process, it's a huge shot in the arm to the small businesses that participate in this marketplace. It's $91 billion, $80 to $90 billion every year. The federal government is the largest procurer of goods and services in the world. So my office really works with all of the federal government, establishing goals for every agency, implementing small business side provisions to ensure that small businesses get their fair share of these contracts. Because when our small businesses play in this marketplace, it immediately impacts local environments, increases the small company's footprint, increases employment, and has a positive effect on the communities. So it's not just a percentage that we're trying to achieve, it's really an impact on our local economies, it's really an impact on our industrial base. And that's really what's been interesting over the last several years. As many of you are aware, we have hit the goal 2 years in a row, the goal of 23%, which is roughly $80 to $90 billion out of the $400 to $500 billion that the federal government purchases. We've hit that 2 years in a row. First year, a little over 23%. Last year that was reported, almost 25%. And we're finalizing our numbers for fiscal 2015 right now, and it looks like that trend is moving in the right direction. So it's interesting because both the administration and the Hill, and this is an area where there's a lot of bipartisanship to get measures implemented to ensure that we're casting a broad enough net to bring in small businesses to the federal procurement process. And so both from the administration and on the Hill, we've implemented multiple provisions, including changes to the Women-Owned Small Business Program, to ensure that we are casting a broader net. Some of those include the White House Small Business Procurement Group was established some years ago, and some of the things that came out of there and actually made it into law was keeping senior executive service members accountable to a goal. In other words, on the acquisition side, there's always been a goal. But when you leap the fence to the program side, and the program side is where the budget really resides, oftentimes there was no thought with respect to a small business goal. So what the White House said and agencies implemented, and actually the Hill made law, is that if you're a senior executive service member and you have a budget and a program, you should be held out accountable to a goal. And what we've seen over the last several years is that has created a lot of attention to how an agency is doing with respect to their goal, and has really gained traction with respect to agencies meeting their goal. And the other thing that I think is important for small business contractors, women-owned small businesses certainly, is that the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, we all love acronyms in Washington, D.C., but that's the OSDBU, OSDBU, is the one advocate at every agency that is advocating on the behalf of small businesses to be engaged in the procurement process at that particular agency. Oftentimes, those OSDBU directors were buried at the agency, not necessarily reporting to senior leadership. The White House asked, and the Hill also again followed up, making it the law that OSDBU directors must report to the deputy secretary or higher. This is another provision that has really gathered a lot of attention around small business contracting and has given visibility to the goals at every agency. With respect to the Women-Owned Small Business Program in particular, as you all are aware, the program was put into law back in 2000, but nothing really had been done with respect to implementing it until this administration came in and actually worked very closely with the Hill to establish the set-aside program. And there was challenges, as the Senator mentioned, there was challenges with the set-aside program. The first one was that there was a cap with respect to how, dollar cap with respect to set-aside. And it was $4 to $6 million. And you can imagine how many set-asides there would have to be to get to the 5% goal if we had to abide by that $4 to $6 million cap, where none of the other categories like 8A, service disabled, hub zone had a cap. And this wasn't a sole source cap. It was just a set-aside cap. And so, again, we worked with the Hill. Our administrator was very eager to make sure that this program was in parity with all the other programs. And 2 years ago, that cap was removed, which now allows contracting officers to award and set aside contracts for women-owned small businesses and get closer and closer to that goal. So that was implemented in our regulations, and we worked very closely with the Office of Federal Procurement Policy and the FAR Council and implemented that in the FAR as well rather quickly. Fast forward to this past 2015 NDAA, the Senator mentioned this. Our administrator was very eager to provide sole source provisions, not similar to the 8A because the 8A has some very statutory different provisions, but at a minimum similar to the other socio categories like hub zone, like service disabled. So that was put into law last year. Our rule has been finalized and published. We are in the process of working with the Office of Federal Procurement Policy in finalizing that into the federal acquisition regulations. The date that we have is January of 2016. It should be in the federal acquisition regulations, which will be the time when contracting officers can begin setting aside full sole source awards to women-owned small businesses. What I would also mention is that our administrator had asked us to do a study with respect to the NAICS codes where contracts can be set aside. And North American Industry Classification Codes, NAICS codes, are the various industries the federal government procures goods and services in. As many of you are aware, the Women-Owned Small Business Program is statutorily set up in a way that contracts can be set aside only where women-owned small businesses are underrepresented. So there are 83 NAICS codes where where contracts can be set aside for women-owned small businesses. Our administrator had asked us to redo that study, which was done in 1997, to reanalyze and see if there are other opportunities for set-asides. Again, the Hill, Congress followed up last year and said that we have to complete that study by January of 2016. So we are on schedule to publish a new study, which will more likely than not go out for public comment the first quarter of this year, which will elaborate the methodology that we used and the impact that this study is going to make on where contracts can be set aside for women-owned small businesses. So look for that, and we certainly hope that we receive comments if that goes out for public comment to make sure that we're capturing the right NAICS codes. Last thing I'll mention, I'll mention two more things. One is that many of you have heard that with the sole source provision, we also were given authority to establish a certification program for the women-owned small business set-aside program. So in the contracting world, there are front-end certification programs like the 8A program and the Hub Zone program, and there are self-certification or self-representation programs like the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business Program and like the Woman-Owned Small Business Program, which means basically if you meet the requirements, you can self-represent that you are. We don't get involved as an agency unless there's a protest, and in that case, at the back end, we would ask the right questions and require the right documents to confirm that you are indeed who you say you are. The law says that moving forward, we need to implement a certification program for the WOSB program as well. But I want everybody on the phone to understand that nothing has changed with respect to self-representation until the time that a rule is published. It goes out for public comment. Those public comments are received, are considered, and a program, certification program, is established. As of today, our self-representation program stands until which time it is amended by a new rule. So nothing has changed with respect to self-representation and the repository. And all of this is on our website at sba.gov. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that certification is not here yet, and self-representation, self-certification still stands. A advance notice of public rulemaking will be going out in the next probably 5 to 10 days, which will basically explain how we envision certification, but it will ask a lot of questions from industry, and we hope to get good feedback to incorporate the needs of the community. We understand that establishing a certification program can have a significant impact on our women-owned small businesses, and we want to make sure that we get feedback in finalizing any rule. So this is just an advance notice for public rulemaking. We love our acronym, so it's called an ANPRM. But we hope it will go out. We will certainly notify the Women's Business Council when it goes out, but we hope that industry, women-owned businesses provide good comments, good feedback, so we can make sure that we get it right. The last thing I'll mention is that there's a lot of resources available out there. A lot of folks are not aware about GC Classroom, so if you go to sba.gov/GC, and GC stands for Government Contracting Classroom, there are a number of modules on there with respect to government contracting training. There's some stuff that's 101, but there's material on there that is prepared for government contracting officials. So there is, the whole spectrum of levels of experience. So even if you have been in business and have done a lot of contracting work, there's material on there that can benefit you. And what we have found is that when the women-owned small businesses are educated, they understand the programs, they're the ones that are approaching the contracting officers and saying, did you know you can set this contract aside for a woman-owned small business? So the more we sort of get the message out there and train both contracting officers but the women-owned small businesses themselves, the more we've seen success against that goal. And we certainly have seen success against that goal. And I should mention Challenge Her, which is a co-sponsorship we have with American Express, Open, and Women Impacting Public Policy, which really was an initiative and is an initiative to get the word out with respect to the WOSB program. And year over year, we've seen about a 0.3% increase. So last year we were up to 4.67, and when 15 comes in, I'm hoping it's going to be right around where the goal needs to be, but the numbers aren't finalized yet, and agencies don't certify their numbers until January 1st of 2016. So having said that, I know we want to keep on track. I'm certainly open to any questions that you may have. I know there's a panel coming up, and there's going to be a lot of questions there. But Carla or Amanda, is there an opportunity for questions, or do we need to keep on schedule?
There is, in fact, and we've been monitoring the flow on the chat, and you've answered quite a few of the questions that have come in. Okay. The one that is outstanding, actually, is about the mentor protege program for WSBs. Excellent
question. So as many of you are aware, the Small Business Jobs Act of 2010 provided authority to expand the mentor protege program, which was only in the 8A program, to all the other socio categories. In 2013, Congress asked us to expand it not just to the socio categories, which is women-owned, hub zone, SDVO, but to all small businesses. So we actually had to pull the rule back, rewrite it in a way that encompasses all small businesses. That rule went out for public comment. I hope that this community commented on it. We've incorporated those comments, and we are finalizing a rule that hopefully will be published. It has to go through a final round of interagency clearance, but we're hoping that it will be published in the first quarter of 2016. Now, once we have a rule published, we actually have to stand up a program. And if you can imagine, in the 8A program, we have 5,000 firms, and at any given time, we have about 500 live mentor-protege plans and joint ventures under that. In the all small business world, we probably have about, well, I know we have roughly 232,000 small businesses registered in DSBS, but probably half of those get one-off contracts, and my guesstimate is like 75,000 of them continuously get contracts. So if there's 75,000 players in the market, and you look at a 10% volume, that's 7,500 potential mentor-protege plans, and how do we as an agency get our arms around that and be able to implement it if we've been doing 500 in the 8A program? So we actually have a team that is working to institutionalize an office that would be responsible for the mentor-protege program. The challenge, quite frankly, that we have as an agency is that we receive the mandate but no additional funding. So we are working to figure out how the program can be implemented given the current resources that we have. Maybe, and this was some of the questions that were asked when it went out for public comment, maybe open season, closed season, so we can make sure we monitor the volume and be able to handle the volume. Maybe we focus on the goals that we aren't meeting, like WOSB and HubZone, for those programs first, and once we understand the volume, we can expand it out to all small businesses. But those are the questions we ask, and those are the things we're looking at as we look to institutionalize it. So, short answer, the rule will be published first quarter of 2016. We're looking to at least have a pilot program with a program and staff ready to go in the summer of 2016, so that at least we can launch a pilot program to see what kind of volume we receive in that.
Thanks, John. One more question, actually, and then, Carla, I will yield it back to you, is, John, who will educate the procurement officers about the new rules once they are in place? Where does that responsibility lie? Okay,
so a number of places. We have procurement center representatives that cover all buying activities, and we continuously do training and education with respect to small business programs with contracting officers. So we have oversight over all of the buying activities, but as you can imagine, we have limited resources to be able to impact that. The Office of Federal Procurement Policy sort of mandates what type of training contracting officers must undergo to become fully certified contracting officers. Over the years, in fact, this is another thing we worked with the Hill on. Over the last several years, there's been provisions in the law that have required revisions to the training the contracting officers receive to make sure that they're adequately being trained on small business contracting provisions. So we actually, not only do we work with the PCRs and the contracting officers, we actually have been working with the Federal Acquisition Institute and Defense Acquisition University, which are the entities that train the contracting officers, to make sure that the training that contracting officers are receiving is incorporating the various small business provisions. But what I will say is that when new things like this come out, it's very, very important for us to leverage our co-sponsorships and our relationships with our stakeholders to make sure that the word is out there. And as I mentioned, a lot of times it's actually the small businesses taking ownership of these things and pushing it with the relationships that they have with the contracting community. But it's sort of a joint effort, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Outstanding, John. Thank you very much for that information. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeanne Shaheen. And
Thank
now, with that, I'd like to introduce Amanda Brown, who you've heard already in this call. She's the Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council. She'll introduce our exciting lineup of panelists and moderate the second half of this meeting. Amanda, the mic is yours.
Thanks so much, Carla, and hello to everyone officially. I'm Amanda Brown, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council. I really could not be more thrilled to be on the line this afternoon for what I know will be an engaging, thought-provoking, and hopefully constructive dialogue. So there are some really great things happening, and great people like John and the Senator focused on these matters and working to make sure that things are moving forward every single day. So I want to call out some of those good things. The first, obviously, is the recent implementation of sole source in the WOSB contracting program. No doubt a huge step forward, and will certainly open the federal marketplace to women business owners in pursuit of both new and larger dollar contracting opportunities. We also have some really great agency performers, which are certainly worthy of recognition and also a resource of best practices. Nearly a quarter of the SBA spend, actually, in FY14 was going to women-owned small businesses. And HHS, another agency, has a history of exceeding the WOSB goal as well. Both of these agencies are represented on this panel discussion today, and I'm hoping we can learn more from them about what's working and notably what is working well. So first, let me introduce Erin Andrew, who is the Assistant Administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration and Director of the Office of Business Ownership, quite the title. She oversees the agency's efforts to promote the growth of women-owned businesses through advocacy and programs that provide business training and counseling, access to credit and capital, and multiple businesses and networking opportunities. She manages a nationwide network of women's business centers that also provide training, counseling, and mentoring to hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs in every state and actually 2 U.S. territories. Her office also works with representatives in every SBA district office to oversee the operations of the women's business centers on the ground and to coordinate the services for women entrepreneurs. Most recently, Erin served as the Director of the Innovation Clusters and Skills Initiatives in the SBA's Office of Entrepreneurial Development as well. Thank you, Erin. I also want to introduce Teresa Lewis. She is the Director of the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. There, she is responsible for developing policy and initiatives, implementing and managing the department's small business program, and she is also responsible for ensuring that all small businesses have the maximum practicable opportunity to participate in providing goods and services to the agency. Her office oversees the agency's efforts to increase the participation of minority-serving institutions of higher education and historically black colleges and universities in HHS programs and activities as well. Before, she served as the director at the Department of the Treasury as well, and under her leadership there, Treasury met 4 of its 5 prime contracting goals in fiscal year 2010 and all of its prime contracting goals in fiscal year 2011. She has served over 10 years in various positions at the U.S. Small Business Administration, following 6 years of government contracting experience as a contract specialist with the Department of the Air Force and the Department of Commerce. And she is a retired major from the United States Air Force. So welcome again to you, Erin and Teresa. On this call today, we also want to recognize the programs and resources that are available to women, including the third-party certifiers, those organizations that provide the WOSB certification and procurement training that John just spoke about. We want to talk about women impacting public policy. They have a partnership with American Express Open and the SBA for Challenge Her initiatives that take place across the country and create opportunities and access to federal contracts. We also want to talk about the fact that there's a dedicated contracting program. There's the 8A program and other set-asides that are working to make sure that we are getting more women access and opportunity within the federal marketplace. And then there are also those agency forecasts, which are amazing resources for scoping out opportunities. So on the call, we certainly make sure to highlight all of these resources. And we're lucky to be joined by Rose Wang and Elise Hernandez, two women small business owners who have successfully navigated the government procurement process. And we'll dive into their stories and experiences so we can really learn from their journeys. So let me introduce them. Elise Hernandez is the CEO and founder of Ideal Systems Solutions, which was founded in 1997. The organization has been a leading provider of information technology products, solutions, and professional services throughout the U.S. to government agencies, to prime contractors, to educational institutions, and commercial organizations nationwide. Ideal System Solutions is headquartered in Minnesota with branch offices throughout the country, actually, and they offer leading-edge technology solutions including storage, data center, cloud computing, infrastructure management, and unified communications. Ideal is it is an SDB, it is a HubZone, woman, and minority-owned certified business. And then we have Rose Wang. She is the CEO and founder of Binary Group, and I'll let her share. She has some good news herself that I will allow her to share on this call. But the Binary Group is an information technology services firm which was recognized by Inc. magazine as one of the fastest-growing privately held businesses in the country. Rose is a respected enterprise architect and IT strategist. She actively participates in government, women's business, and technology organizations. She speaks frequently at professional conferences and meetings on matters specific to technology strategies and policies, as well as entrepreneurship and advancing careers for women and minorities. She is a current member of the board of directors for the Association of Enterprise Information, a division of the National Defense Industrial Association. She is a past member of the board of directors for the Association of Corporate Growth National Capital Region and Women in Technology. Rose is also a former member of this council, so it's very good to have her back. So welcome, Elise, and welcome, Rose.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
So there's a lot of progress that has been made, but the fact is that the federal government, which, as the senator confirmed, is the largest buyer of goods and services, and they have a 5% goal that has still never been met. We have been creeping our way there, and Shoraka just said that we're moving in the right direction with his glimpse of the FY15 numbers as well. Hopefully we are on track for reaching it soon. Maybe Erin and Teresa have more of an inside scoop for us. But I also want to move us into a space where we're thinking bigger. We can't stop there, nor should we. The goal should not only be met, it needs to be exceeded. There are just far too many barriers and too many challenges that remain for women in pursuit of these opportunities. And just to call some, to point to one example, the Department of Energy came in at 1.27% in fiscal year 2014. So this raises some important questions. The first, is it because women aren't in the industries? Do we need to strengthen the pipeline? Are women bidding and then not winning, and if so, why? Is it due to the size of those contracts or just the limited number of contracts available from these agencies? And also, what outreach is that agency doing to reach women? Also, is it an agency priority? Whatever the case may be and whatever the story may be, the numbers don't lie, and there's room for progress. When the federal government falls short of its minimal procurement goal, it's a huge loss for the government and women-owned small businesses in terms of both number of awards and the size of the awards. According to estimates made from the fiscal year 2014 scorecard, it was actually a potential opportunity loss of $1.2 billion. So, again, we are very lucky to have these impressive women joining us today, and there is so much to talk about. The group of women that we have convened bring great expertise and perspective as practitioners, program and policy leaders and influencers, and then also government contractors themselves. They too share in the commitment to increasing women's participation and access to contracts. So, again, to those of you, thank you to the panelists for joining us, and welcome. And two things on housekeeping before we move into the questions. The first is, please do use the hashtag #BeyondThe5. Our handle is at NWBC, and you can see all of the panelist handles as well there on the screen. Help us take the conversation line. And again, you can tweet your questions. We will be monitoring that. You can also use the chat function of the web conference, and I will try to incorporate your questions throughout the panel. We will also try to leave some time for Q&A at the end as well. All right, let's get started. I want to start with women's participation and do a little bit of level setting. So Erin and Teresa, I'm looking at you through this phone and would like for the two of you to kick us off. What trends are you seeing in terms of women's participation in the marketplace? There are set-asides. There's, obviously the WOSB contracting programs. There's now sole source authority. Has participation increased?
Yes. Erin Andrew from the SBA, and I think Jeanne Shaheen kind of laid out nicely sort of some of the changes. I have to say, we implemented the Women-Owned Small Business Contracting Program in 2011. It was passed a decade earlier, but the regs actually were released, and the program was released in 2011. I think at first we saw a slow uptick just because I think contracting officers were figuring out how to use the program. We were kind of getting the word out. We were doing a lot of training both with our resource partners, our women's business centers, our small business development centers, and SCORE, our SCORE network at SBA and our district offices, but also working very closely, with the contracting officers and the PCRs. So it took some time to get started, but I think now, since its implementation, we have seen a consistent increase, in terms of getting closer to that goal. The 4.32% year before last and the 4.68% this past year are really, promising. And I really do think, we saw sort of the increase after the caps were removed from the National Defense Authorization Act back in 2013, which was very helpful to a lot of women-owned small businesses that were trying to get larger contracts, through that program. And I really do think the sole source, once that, starts to be used, will have a really positive increase in terms of the numbers. And I know Jeanne Shaheen mentioned we're whole, and I think we're very positive about the numbers that will come out from this previous year. And I think we can, we're just going to continue to go up. And I often get asked, well, why is the goal not 10%? And
that's going to be one of my rapid fire questions at the end.
Okay, good. Well, we'll take it on now. We'll take it on now. And I agree. Like women make up, over 30% of the small businesses in this country. We've seen such an increase per the census data numbers that were kind of highlighted by the National Women's Business Council earlier this year. Just the incredible increase, I think around 27, 28%, just from 2007 to 2012 in terms of the number of women-owned businesses. And yes, we would love to see that number increase. I think we really want to make this goal. And once we make this goal, the number will increase and we'll continue to push ahead. But it is disconcerting that it has taken, it's taken a long time. And I have to say, and I'll let my colleague at HHS talk to this, I do think, different agencies have really embraced this goal, and I think you've seen leadership at the top. And since this administration has come in, you've really seen the president himself, Valerie Jarrett, they were convening the agencies and really pushing hard on reaching not only the 23% goal, but also the women's 5% goal. And so the leadership at the top really can make a key difference. And we have some amazing contracting officers, too, and having a really good contracting officer, our program manager who is deciding to set something aside can make a huge difference. So we've seen a lot of those trends. We're hopeful that will just increase.
And Teresa, do you have anything to add just in terms of participation rates, but also maybe in terms of where and how women are performing and participating?
So, can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So the first thing I want to do is just thank Jeanne Shoraka and everything that he has done on behalf of small business in general. He has really made some headway at SBA, and I just, need everybody to know that he truly has been an advocate on behalf of women-owned small business, but small businesses in general. So I just wanted to put that out there. So as far as are we seeing a change or increasing participation by women? And I have to say yes. I actually was at SBA when they first even decided to do a RAND report and sat next to Linda Waters, who actually was responsible for the RAND report. So I've been with the Women-Owned Small Business Program since the very beginning. And what I have seen lately was when we finally enacted provisions that allowed for the set-asides, there was such a burden that I was placed on contracting officers to easily award set-asides to women, and that was using the repository. And so what we've done at HHS is we've brought the SBA over, and we've held webinars, and we've increased our training with our contracting officials, which as a result has increased their use or award of women-owned small businesses. And as you know, as indicated by the percentages, and it looks as we you have it in your slide deck that in 2014 we achieved 6.56%, and if numbers remain the same, that once they finalize the numbers will be at 7.33% for women-owned small businesses, and I really believe that that has a lot to do with the increased training. We have hosted a Challenge Her. We participate in the WIP conference, as well as we have a very close partnership with the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce, and so whenever we get an invitation from one of the women trade associations, and SBA as well, we definitely are out there supporting them. And for us, I've seen contracts for our women-owned small businesses ranging from over $700 million to $155. It really just depends because we are so large. I'm seeing the women-owned small businesses in every aspect. It used to be a time when we didn't see women, for example, in our construction contracts, but we're seeing that now.
That's great. And again, I'm going to feel Erin was using the word promising a lot. It does seem like there are some promising trends happening. Elise or Rose, did you have anything to add just in terms of what you're seeing in this space?
Yeah, this is Elise Hernandez, and I'm definitely seeing more involvement with multiple agencies and programs relating to the WOSB contracting. However, we're still not seeing in our industry a lot of WOSB or EDWOSB set-aside contracts, but there's talk of it, but we're still not seeing it quite yet.
And Rose?
I would echo that. I see a lot more. It's like a funnel, right? The funnel got opened up when the law was passed finally, and then implemented in 2012. So the funnel completely opened up. A lot more women started hearing a great effort by everybody from the legislators to the SBA and all the OSTABUs like Teresa have done a great deal of outreach, and organizations like WIP certainly makes that one of their main missions. So you see the big funnel has opened up. Well, what I have not seen, and hopefully with this sole source authority being implemented, we'll see more of is the set-aside of WOSB contracts or EDWOSB contract. They're far and few between.
Got it. I'm actually going to keep the mic to you, Rose. I'd love to hear, can you share with us your story? So we've gotten some questions in through the chat. Just how do you get started? What's the entree? How do you find out about opportunities? When did you even start thinking about that contracting was the right thing for your business? And it would be helpful to hear your story. And then, spoiler alert, Elise, you are up next.
So my story is probably unique in some ways and not so unique in other ways. I had no interest of actually doing contracting until 9/11. So it was I was doing consulting work. I went to CTO practice, consulting practice, and on 9/11 I decided as an immigrant this is what I will do for my adopted country. So that was that. I knew nothing about government contracting. And on top of it, I picked I wanted to do something with national security with my technology background. So I picked arguably even harder to access market of the federal market, which is military national security market. But the rewards were great. So there were a lot of resources already available. This was 2001, and once I turned my attention to it, I found there were a lot of free resources that were funded by and continue to be funded by the federal government, the SBA resources, and they were very hard to find online back then, but they were small business development centers, women's development centers. I particularly took advantage of PTAX, Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and just took every single free class there was to take and learned everything I could. And how I got my first contract was through a very large prime contractor, DynCorp. They convinced me that, with my help, I could help them win a large contract, that they didn't have the commercial best practice technology, and in exchange for a fee, I put my sweat equity in to negotiate a percentage of win if we win. So that's how I got started.
Thanks for sharing. And Elise?
Yes, so I had been in the technology industry since right out of high school and continued my career in various positions within technology throughout college and graduate school. And so as part of my MBA graduation requirement, I was to write a business plan. And since I was already in the technology industry and I was very familiar with this industry, I decided to write a technology-based business plan, and in 1996, I completed this business plan for a technology solution company called Ideal Systems Solutions, Inc., which is what it is still called today. At this time, I also met my future husband, who happened to also be in the industry. So I really didn't have any plans to execute the business plan. We were just content working for another small technology company. However, once the plan was finally completed, and with the full support of my husband, we decided to actually implement the business. And at the time, we weren't doing any government contracting, or we didn't have any government relationships. However, we just knew that there were benefits to being woman or minority-owned. I'm also a minority-owned company. But we really weren't quite sure of these benefits until one day, one of our customers, one of our only government customers, who was the Navy, asked if we were an 8A certified company, because he indicated that he had $1 million to spend within a week. It was end of the government contracting fiscal year, and said, are you an 8A company? And I went, well, what is that? And he explained it, high level. I'm like, well, let me get back to you on that, and let me see what I have to do to become an 8A company. So I reached out to the SBA and was educated very quickly on the 8A program. Quickly to realize that, this doesn't happen overnight, and this just isn't a form you sign and, you're 8A certified. So through the SBA, we began the whole 8A certification process, and at that time, I really learned a lot about government contracting. And the SBA was very instrumental in teaching me the benefits of small business contracting, and just provided multiple resources to help navigate through the complexity of government contracting. And one of the things they taught me, how to find government contracts, and put me in touch with multiple organizations such as WBNC, NMSDC, WIP. As Rose mentioned, she used PTAC as a resource. We did as well. And through specialized training and resources and other services that help small businesses succeed in government contracting, we were really able to educate ourselves in what it meant to be a government contractor. And that was just the vertical market that we decided to shift towards from the commercial marketplace, because we were, knew all these programs were available for small businesses. So I've been running Ideal for almost 20 years now, And, during this time, I personally have probably spent thousands of hours educating myself on government contracting, including the FARs, the DFARs, the regulations, government contract law. And, that's really where we ended up focusing, is on the federal marketplace. And one of the things that we did as well, similar to Rose, is we started out as a subcontractor to large system integrators or prime contractors. So that's really where we started. We didn't go directly after federal government contracts. We started as a subcontractor. And as of today, we still do a lot of subcontracting. However, at this point, we probably have about 50% of our revenue consists of direct government contracts, and the other 50% is as a subcontractor to prime contractors.
Great. I'm going to shift things around a little bit. We have one question that came in on the chat that's kind of moving us into the challenges and barriers, and you were just hinting at that a little bit. So staying in that path or that zone, Rose and Elise, can you speak? So one of the questions is about just the timeline. So it is difficult to get started, obviously, but I think where people run into problems is being able to keep going. People will scout out different opportunities throughout the government, but then it might take 2 years for them to see that contract that they're looking into come up, or have an opportunity to actually submit something. How have you managed that kind of proposal evaluation cycle, specifically where we have some complaints that it is that process that can kill the small business?
That is a unique characteristic of the federal contracting market. Corporate procurements typically don't last 12, 18, 24 months. So I go back to subcontracting. The early years were very, very difficult. It sounds like Elise and I had a similar background. We were both technologists and could bill ourselves out in early days to keep the lights on, so to speak. And in fact, I didn't add any staff and didn't make myself not billable. I was billable 40 hours a week until I had 20 people in the company billable. And so I had enough of a war chest saved up to take myself off of, generating revenue, so we could focus more on bidding on contracts. That sales cycle is just something you have to either live with or say, this is not something I can deal with. I'll move to another market. Just grow up.
So I will also add, along those similar lines, is one of the things that we did as well is the subcontracting, as I mentioned before, because what's really crucial is if you're going to go after prime contracts directly with the government is that you have past performance. Well, most small businesses starting out just don't have the past performance that they can put onto that RFP. So we started out very similar. We looked for opportunities where we could subcontract to a prime contract and subcontract a piece of it, and that is how we actually built up our past performance. And then when we were able to enough past performance as a subcontractor, then we started going after contracts directly that were in scope, were similar in scope to some of the past performance that we performed in the past. As far as the whole timeline evaluation, proposal evaluation cycle, what I would say is, not only do you want to go after the subcontracting opportunities, but once you decide to go directly after the contracts, just fill your pipeline with small contracts, large contracts, because, the larger contracts do take a long time. It appears that the bigger the contract, the longer it's going to take. And the bigger the contract, the more visibility there is into those contracts and the greater the competition. So some of our contracts can range just from a few $1,000s up to hundreds of millions of dollars. And those smaller contracts don't have as much visibility, and your competition is somewhat limited because they're just not allowed as the bigger contracts. So I would just say, yes, the proposal cycle can vary greatly based on the type of contract, the size of the contract, the scope of the contract. So fill the pipeline with small contracts, large contracts, as a subcontractor, direct, and, once you start filling that pipeline, you'll see things that will start funneling through.
And I want to add another point. Federal contracting business, this is probably not usually said openly, but it's by and large a relationship business. In order for you to develop the business and reliably, you want to be able to hear about opportunities maybe before other people have heard about it and can understand the problem space better than others, so you have a better chance of putting in a really good response. So working as a subcontractor, building past performances, getting to know the agency that you are already working in, and building relationships, understanding the problems that they're trying to solve, those are efforts that are well spent.
Thanks, Rose. That's really helpful, and we do appreciate the tough love. I'm going to get Erin and Teresa talking again, and one of the questions that we have is, what do you think is actually the greatest opportunity for women? So a little bit of a shift, just what is working well? What are your agencies doing that are to allow your agencies to exceed the 5% goal? Are there programs or things that we can look into expanding, or that should become more of a norm, best practices that your agencies have that should be more of a norm across the federal agencies? And I'll start with you, Teresa.
Okay, so from HHS's perspective, we do treat women-owned small businesses as we do all others. But we really, from my office's perspective, really try to look at each agency under the department, their achievement in the specific areas. And then I meet on a regular basis with the heads of contracting to address strategies on achieving the goals where they are deficient. So for those agencies that struggle with achieving their women-owned small business goals, my team and I actually provide them with a list of women-owned small businesses that are performing in that industry, as well as the NAICS code. So depending on, what that NAICS code is and what the performance is, we provide them with that. And so that we're finding that we're getting some legs around. Now, as far as from a woman-owned small business perspective, I think, Rose, it may have been you who said that it's relationship building. And it really, really is. It does require you. HHS hosts a monthly vendor outreach session, and my staff knows that I don't turn anyone away. And so and it's difficult sometimes to get an appointment, but even if you're not able to get a set appointment, just come, and we will open up an opportunity for you to meet with some of our small business specialists. As you're marketing the various agencies and trying to decide on, which one should I meet with, you really have to determine and do that homework before you come into those monthly meetings. All of my tiers host some form of the vendor outreach session. My small business specialist, HHS, is one of the few agencies where the small business specialists report directly to the OSDBU director, and that's given me a lot of latitude. The feedback that they're sharing with me is, Ms. Lewis, I haven't had some of these companies, I'll give them advice. Some don't take the advice I give them. Some do, but then they don't come back. They don't give us an opportunity to meet them. When we invite them for an oral presentation, the concentration is not on the achieving the technical aspects of the job, showing how they can provide or add value. And so for some women-owned small businesses in particular, that I think that that's an area that they really need to focus on. And again, I can share with you many things as I typically do small businesses, but it really comes down to what Rose said. It comes down to getting out here and letting us know that you're here. When you get that audience, making sure that you don't spend, a lot of time on superfluous things that aren't important, focusing really on, that target area, what technically that you can do and how you've done it for others. I mean, that's always a wise conversation that they want to hear. And, really it's a value-added conversation that they want to hear.
Thank you so much, and we so appreciate your personal commitment to this. I'm sure that we have about 200 women that are dialed into this call right now, so your time might become more full in the future. So, Erin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of it. I think something that I just want to make folks aware of, too, when you think about the SBA, we really do work with the other agencies on ensuring that we meet that 23% goal and that 5% goal for women. The SBA also has other resources that can be used in conjunction and partnership with, the federal contract that you do get. And really understanding SBA's lending programs, we've made a lot of changes to our lending programs. So we often hear there are a lot of women that might get a contract but can't find the capital to kind of actually do the contract. And we're working really closely with banks and other access to capital partners to ensure that they understand, the contracting space and to make sure that they're set to provide capital where appropriate. And we have 68 district offices across the country, so depending on where you are, you can find and connect with one of the SBA district offices who has those relationships with the bankers. And I know, we've talked about this before, where there could be a situation where a woman can't get access to capital after going to her bank or to another bank, and she'll have a government loan, and she just might not be talking to the right bank that understands government contracting. And then we also have 14,000 resource partners as well that provide free and low-cost counseling and training, and they are trained in helping with government contracting. So I just wanted to kind of put those out there. I take the opportunity when we look at the NAICS codes, the study that Jeanne Shaheen mentioned in terms of shifting and hopefully expanding the number of NAICS codes that qualify under the Women-Owned Small Business Contracting Program. And then one other point that I wanted to make is we see a lot of women in the private sector supply chain and also doing business with the state and local governments that are primed and ready to potentially do work with the federal government but just haven't thought about it as an opportunity, and just really encourage them to do that. And then finally, one last thing is once you do, a job with the federal government, you're more likely to continue to get additional jobs. So just, staying in it, getting experience in it, understanding sort of the payment process and other things, very, very key to continued work, past performance to get you another contract within the federal government.
And on that payment piece, so one of the questions that we have is citing one of the problems is the slow payment. Can you speak to what is being done to ensure payment within 30 days?
No, and that's been a huge push administration-wide to really get down to a 30-day commitment. We've been, really working with agencies on that, and that's something that SBA is very, very committed to just because we know payment can be the biggest barrier. To Rose's point, federal government contracting, you just have to be aware of the facts prior to getting into it, and you have to prepare for a little bit of a payment delay. Like I said, we are pushing for that 30-day goal, and that's where we want to be. I think it has changed significantly over the course of the last decade. We sometimes hear now, which I always get excited about, and it's not always because we still have instances where this does not happen, but sometimes the federal government actually pays faster than the private sector supply chain. It just depends. But we are really trying as hard as we can to stay committed to that 30-day time period. But it is, like everything, a work in progress and something we still strive to. But it's a great point, and I just think making sure that you prepare accordingly for a potential, delay is always important when you think about government contracting. You're not going to, there are some startups who do government contracting, but generally speaking, usually you're testing it out where you're not dealing with a lot of, just the cost to act the government contract, the cost to find the government contract, the cost to do business. It can be a little bit more. So you just want to make sure that you have the capacity to actually do that as well as a business.
Great.
Amanda, this is Teresa. Can I just add one thing from the government perspective, and that is the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So if a small business is experiencing delays in payment, they have to notify the small business office so that we can assist them with that. And now the law has changed that the small business, even if they're serving in the subcontracting role, that they can notify the contracting officer as well about failure to receive payment, and the OSIBU director, because that's what we're here for. SBA also has what's called a procurement center representative, a PCR, who provide SBA oversight at the federal agencies, and they are there to assist the small businesses as well to ensure that they're getting proper payment, because there should not be a delay unless there is a reason. For example, we've gotten invoices where the invoices are not complete, or the contractor may have billed us, twice for something, or whatever. The invoice wasn't submitted completely, and so, or correctly. There may have been some mistakes on there that weren't resolved. So once you submit a valid and completed invoice, that if you're not getting paid, you need to speak up and let somebody know. And that means also having a good relationship with that contracting officer representative, too, because that's a critical piece. We as women don't always speak up, and so that's something that we have to do as well. So thank you.
I think that's really helpful, too, just highlighting all the different players involved. So there are those at the program level and the contracting officer representatives within those offices, and there are the contracting officers too, which, as has been clearly stated by everyone, those relationships are key. So it's helpful to know all of the different players as well. But so the council, we have this responsibility, conducting research and then making policy recommendations to what we call our customers, the SBA, the White House, and the Congress each year. And as such, it's our job to make informed recommendations. So I want to transition this conversation. We have a little bit of time left into what are these solutions, what are the remedies, what are the new ideas that we can put on the table, what are things that we should be championing or doing more to make sure that we are not only reaching this 5% goal but exceeding that. And so with that, I want to move us into this kind of practical and actionable advice specifically to women business owners. So one of the questions that we have, and I'll start actually with you, Erin, from the government side, one of the questions that we have is what, for a woman that's in a rural area that does not have access to a WBC near her, what should she do?
Yeah, great question. So go to SBA.gov. You can find resource partners in your area, and if there isn't one in your area, we do have online training that's available. A lot of our resource partners are actually responsible for certain regions within a state or the whole state, so they do counseling via phone, and they also travel. We have a lot of our women's business centers that travel all over a state, so it just depends. So go ahead and contact your SBA district office if you are in a rural area and find out where the best resource is and specifically what your issue is. Different resource partners are different depending on the issue that you might have. Also, if you go to sba.gov/training, we have a lot of online courses. Jeanne Shaheen had mentioned the government contracting the GC classroom. So that is a really good resource as well. And then we also have another tool that we talk about sometimes called sba.gov/sizeup. SIZEUP, that helps you see how you're comparing to other businesses in your same industry. So there are a wealth of resources, but definitely contact your local SBA resource to get in contact with the right person. And if you have any issues or questions getting a hold of someone in the area, I'll give my email address out. My email address
We'll be tweeting that.
Oh, great. No. You don't have to do that. But I'll give it to the people who called it. No, I'm just kidding. My email address is erin.andrew, ERIN.ANDREW, no S, not the SCN reporter or Dancing with Stars person, but Erin.Andrew@SBA.gov. If you're, please try to reach out to your district office first, but if you have a problem and you cannot get a hold of anyone, you're not finding a resource you need, feel free to reach out, and our team will make sure to put you in touch with the right person.
And reach out to the council. We're happy to help navigate and field some of those inquiries. And for the other panelists, let's pretend for a second that I'm able to pass a magic wand through this phone, and you now have that in your hand. And we're thinking about what these challenges and barriers are, and I think Rose and you and Elise too, the specific challenges and barriers that you face. What policy prescriptions you have for helping the government reach this 5% goal and, again, hopefully exceeding it?
I'll try something. I think Jeanne Shaheen said now every agency's COO, every agency COO has a performance rating that has small business contracting as part of that metric. I didn't hear him completely correctly, but every government agency's executives now have performance ratings that are tied to contracting goals. If that's the case, that's not a well-known fact. That's a great policy that needs to be held accountable, and a scorecard of some sort needs to be published.
Yeah, I know, and this is Erin. It's definitely in all of our ratings, like at SBA. I mean, maybe that's 10 to 25% of women-owned small businesses, getting federal contracts. But it's like I said, it's from the top down. It's a very important thing, and so it is tied to folks' performance within the federal government.
Yeah, that idea of disclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and accountability.
Yeah.
So it's not just agency, some faceless agency with a name, right? These are the folks that are responsible for achieving this goal.
Yeah. That's a great one. Any other thoughts?
From a federal agency perspective, what the contracting officers have shared with me that is the greatest challenge really is the repository. A lot of them don't know or understand how to use it. So they will award to a woman-owned small business, but the majority are not using the set-aside authority. And it's because of how complicated the law has been to use, in all honesty. And so the fact that we can award a contract directly to a woman-owned small business and still get the credit towards achieving our goal, that's what contracting officers are doing. So I don't know if that helps, Amanda, as far as the,
Definitely. I'm actually going to push you on that, too. One of the questions that we have in the chat is I'm reading it, a disproportionate percentage of small business set-asides are reserved for 8As. We've been told it's almost impossible to reassign a recompete from an 8A to another more general small business designation. How can women-owned small businesses find enough opportunities in this environment?
Okay, so let me say just a couple of things. One is the small business categories should not fight with one another. I think that there's enough large business dollars that can go to enough small business dollars. So I would see the other categories as finding a way to team with them as opposed to, get $8 changing those to, another small business category. So that's my perspective on that. Now, let's talk about strategically, how do you find opportunities? Because I think that is really the key, is and I don't know how many of you are familiar with the budget in brief. HHS, we call it the budget in brief. Some call it, other documents. In that budget, but it's the budget justification that the heads of the agencies use to send to Congress to request funding for their project priorities. If I, the head of FDA, CDC, NIH, say to Congress that I need $100 because I'm going to use that money to research blood transfers, then that says to you, the small business, when you read that is going to be their priority. So how can I assist them with that mission? What skill sets do I bring to the table that's different than my competitors, that's going to help them be smarter, faster, cheaper? So if you go to that budget document, that's going to tell you where the priorities are and where you should be focusing. The Federal Procurement Data System, I'm not sure how many of you use that. The abbreviation, the acronym is FPDS. You can use this easy search function. You can put in, let's say, using, again, the same example, blood transfer technology. You could put that in the easy search box, and you can search by, and it's going to tell you every single department within the federal government that buys that service. And when you drill down even further, it's going to tell you which agency within that department is buying that. It's going to tell you who the current contract holder is and when that contract vehicle expires. It's also going to tell you who's the point of contact so that you're not searching all over the federal government trying to find out who buys what you sell. This system is going to tell you. And it's going to tell you when you're going to have an opportunity to get in. It takes 18 to 24 months to build a relationship. That tells you exactly which procurements do you need to start introducing yourselves to that particular organization to say, hey, guys, I got a better mousetrap.
That's super helpful, Teresa. Thank you for that. There are so many resources that have been shared, so I just want to assure everyone on the call that we'll be sure to include all of this information on a recap. We will also be posting this web conference on our website in the next couple of days, so you can always check back to get all of these resources. And while we're there, I want to also ask Rose and Elise, are there other resources that you've used that have not yet been mentioned or referenced on this call?
I'm going to put a plug in for WIP. I'm Women Impacting Public Policy.
Is it to do that, Rose?
Well, I joined it maybe 10 years ago and found it to be a great organization, a lot of camaraderie. Of course, now I'm on the board of directors for WIP because I believe in what WIP is doing and really supporting, supplementing, and leading in a lot of areas of women entrepreneurship, especially in the procurement arena. They have a lot of programming that are free to women entrepreneurs at different stages, whether you're just starting to get into the procurement, federal procurement, or you are more advanced, already got some, or you're looking at resources or teaming. Or how do you turn something into a set-aside? So those are very, very valuable network. And that's a solution that we cannot forget is we have to form our own network. Teresa said it very well. This is a relationship business. It takes 18 to 24 months to build relationships so you can know that you have a better mousetrap for whatever that next opportunity is. You also have to team. You also have to build your own network of people that you know and trust and can do work with. That's an integral part of building your business.
Yeah, and this is Elise, and most of the woman-owned organizations have been mentioned in this conversation. However, as a minority-owned business as well, we reach out to minority networks such as the Metropolitan Development Economic Association. There's the Minority Business Development Agency, the National Minority Supplier Development Council. So depending upon, what different categories outside of woman-owned that you may fall into, there's a lot of affiliate type organizations to the women-owned organizations out there as well. And to just reiterate what Rose said, it's relationships, it's a network. There are so many different organizations out there that are available to help small businesses succeed, and we actually keep a list based on being a small business, woman-owned, minority, hub zone. We keep a list of all the different organizations that we can reach out to for education, networking opportunities, to look at, different solicitations out there that may not be on some of the other sites like FBO.gov, and I think there were some other sites mentioned as well. So we just keep a list of all these different organizations that we can reach out to for to build that network, to build those relationships within those organizations, and to allow them to help you connect and build relationships with the contracting officers, the small business liaisons, and it's just building that network.
That's so great. Thank you so much for sharing. I am cognizant of time. I could definitely go on and on, but I will begin to wrap this up, and I actually think it would be helpful to do a little bit of rapid fire, which has become the norm for our public meeting. So 2 questions for everyone. They should be easy. I will start with you, Rose, so you can prepare. The first one is, we are at 5%. What do you think that goal should be for women-owned small businesses? And the second one, if you had one thing to share today, and really thinking about one word or one sentence, what would that be?
We are at 5. I think we can go to 8. 8 is a great number.
Pretty civil.
That is pretty civil, yes. The word I would leave you with is tenacity. Have tenacity and don't give up.
Thank you. Great advice. Teresa?
So for me, as far as what the goal should be, let me just say that in my role, I will say that whatever the goal is, we will support 110%.
Yes.
So let me just say that. So as far as a couple of words of advice, I would just say be strategic. You don't have a lot of money and time and resources, so just be strategic in how you proceed. And I'd like to extend an invitation to everyone. We're hosting what we call our annual Getting Back to Business events, and we bring out contracting officials, our large prime contractors as well, and love to invite all of you, and it's on our website at hhs.gov/small business.
Thank you. Well, we'll post that on ours as well.
Okay. Thank you.
And Elise?
Yes, pertaining to the contract goal, I'm not sure who made the comment, but let's get to the 5% first and figure out how we can get to the 5%. Then after that, I would like to see it increase, somewhere between, 8 and 10% would be a nice and realistic goal. What I'd like to leave is with a piece of advice. Being in this business for almost 20 years now, is understand government contracting. There's a vast amount of regulations tied to government contracting, and either you yourself or somebody on your team really needs to understand government contracting, FARs, DFARs, clauses, and read the contracts. You'd be surprised at how many people will sign a government contract and not understand the language and what needs to be flowed down to subcontractors, and just make sure you understand what you're agreeing to. It's not necessarily just delivering a product or a service. There could be a lot of other requirements that are tied to that contract.
Great. Thank you. And Erin?
Okay, well, I think you heard me say this before. Let's absolutely get to that 5%. I think we will. And then let's see the sky's our limit. So I think there is a lot of opportunity there. And then just in terms of words to leave you all with, I think I have 2 things. Shooting a little bit here. Pushing the envelope. Number 1, you don't have to go it alone. There are resources out there through the federal government. SBA has resources. As you mentioned, as you heard, HHS has sessions. Like, you do not have to go it alone. So please take advantage of those resources and those opportunities. And then number two, persistence pays off. I think that's true with anything in life. The building relationships is so critical, but a lot of folks that are in the contracting space are, getting a lot of things thrown at them at once, a lot of folks in the federal government. So those that, squeaky wheels, actually does make a difference in the federal government. So I think persistence pays off is a really important thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the federal government space.
Thank you. And thank you so much to all of our amazing panelists. We are super grateful for your authenticity and expertise, and so happy that you are all doing what you are doing and in the places that you are. So thank you again for your time, and we will post this webinar and answer those questions that did come in, but we did not get a chance to do so. We'll make sure to do so in the follow-up following this call. So thank you, everyone, for your time, and Carla, I will turn it back over to you to close us out.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for being such a great moderator and for facilitating this conversation. And let me also say thank you to Erin and Rose and Teresa and Elise for the outstanding information that you offered to everyone today. I won't go through and summarize everything that I've heard because, as Amanda has said, we're going to put all of this information on our website and continue to be a resource. But the information was so rich, whether it was from how to use PTAC to how to build those relationships and getting to the truth about the relationships and how important they are to success, as well as, speaking up in payment. It was just really rich. So, ladies, thank you very, very much for your insight. So I'll close with the Council's theory of change. Our theory of change is simple. Data reveals disparities and identifies the intervention points for informed policy recommendations. And research is a springboard for action. Inspiring constructive change and laying the groundwork for important dialogue to take place, a dialogue like we've had today, as well as strong and real suggestions that are actionable by our policymakers are really, really important, and they're important to our overall commitment to a thriving community of women entrepreneurs. We will continue to leverage the data for insight and for perspective and continue to produce compelling research to advocate for policy and tools to create a long-term sustainable platform for success for women entrepreneurs. Leveraging what is known, we can address the inequities and the disparities that we talked about earlier in this call, and we can enhance the resources like program curriculum, matchmaking programs, improving policies related to access and distribution of capital, and to ensure that advantage. We have to continue to improve the pathways to capital and alternative sources of capital and continue to level the playing field for women. And so let's all continue to find new ways and opportunities for women to access the relationships, the resources, and the information that they need that will give them that access to capital and that ability to start and to scale their businesses. So as we move the agenda forward, it is our honor to serve as counselor, convener, and collaborator. Fiscal year 2015 was proof of concept, setting a standard for the Council's consultative function and our agent of change approach. But in 2016, we invite all of you to join us in the movement to support and sustain women's entrepreneurship. It will be a year about action. And that brings us to the conclusions of our meeting today. Thank you again to the members of the panel for joining us today. We appreciate your candor and your perspective. Thank you again to Jeanne Shaheen as well as Senator Shaheen, and to my fellow council members. Thank you for your continued engagements and your efforts to support women entrepreneurs across the country. And to the audience, thank you for taking the time out of your Tuesday in a holiday season to join us today. Please stay in touch. We are the National Women's Business Council, an independent voice of women entrepreneurs to the White House, the Congress, and the SBA, and we are here to support you. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn, and again, we will post the links to a recording of today's program and other resources on these channels. And the meeting is officially adjourned at 4 p.m. on December 8th. Have a very happy holiday season.